Some crimes are so chilling they don't just make headlines, they haunt courtrooms. But what happens when the killer is a woman, and her reaction to justice is more shocking than the crime itself? From violent outbursts to supernatural rants, these female murderers didn't just break the law, they broke courtroom composure in the most disturbing ways imaginable. In Douglas County, one case stood out for its strange courtroom scenes. The trial of 32-year-old Sahara T., sometimes noted as Sahara T. Breeze Fakir. She was accused of murdering 66-year-old Jerry Wheeler, a respected businessman, husband, and grandfather. The crime sent shockwaves through the community, especially given the brutal nature of his death. Investigators discovered Wheeler's body with multiple stab wounds, leading the district attorney to pursue a first-degree murder charge. Sahara was caught about a month after the incident, which allowed time for rumors and local news coverage to build a sense of dread around her upcoming court appearance. At the initial hearing, the judge began by reading Sahara's charges. Immediately, her behavior turned odd. She ranted about the courthouse being cursed, claiming that if anyone judged her, they would face punishment from a higher power. People in the gallery exchanged confused glances. It became clear this would be no ordinary arraignment. The judge politely explained Sahara's right to legal counsel, saying she could apply for a public defender if she could not afford her attorney. Sahara dismissed the offer, demanding immediate release and calling the entire system disbelievers. She declared that Allah is my lawyer and threatened that vengeance would fall upon everyone present if they did not let her go. As the trial moved forward, Sahara continued to be disruptive. During pre-trial motions, she would stand up abruptly, shout at the judge, and declare the environment was evil. The judge, maintaining composure, tried to keep the proceedings on track. Court officers stood ready to remove her if she became too aggressive. Several times, the judge had to remind her that outbursts could lead to contempt charges, but Sahara seemed oblivious or unconcerned. Prosecutors laid out their evidence. Footprints matching Sahara's shoes at the crime scene, Wheeler's blood on clothing recovered from her home, and text messages suggesting she had planned to confront him. They argued that she tried to rob him. The situation escalated, and she stabbed him multiple times. Sahara's erratic statements offered no real defense, other than claiming a divine right to be freed. In the end, Sahara was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge scheduled a separate sentencing hearing, hoping she would appear calmer, but at the sentencing, her theatrics persisted. When the judge pronounced life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, Sahara stomped her feet, cursed the judge, and said everyone in the room would pay for not believing in her. Court officers stepped in to escort her out, while the victim's family watched in a mixture of relief and disbelief. Local news outlets aired clips of Sahara's meltdown, labeling her the cursed courthouse Karen. Social media buzzed with opinions. Some people felt she had serious mental health issues, while others believed she was simply manipulative. The victim's family spoke briefly to reporters, stating that justice was served for Jerry Wheeler, though they found Sahara's behavior unsettling and disrespectful. They appreciated the judge's calm approach in the face of her insults. Despite Sahara's dramatic protests, the evidence left no doubt about her guilt. In prison, she carries a label of being unpredictable and combative. Observers note that her story highlights how dangerous some individuals can be when they feel above the law. Her case is now cited in Douglas County as one of the strangest examples of a defendant's meltdown at sentencing. For the Wheeler family, seeing Sahara removed in handcuffs offered some closure, though they remain saddened by the cruel nature of Jerry's death. They hope the severe sentence sends a message. No matter how loudly someone rants or blames the system, the truth eventually emerges and justice will be done, even for the most dramatic Karens. Kimberly Kessler's case in Nassau County, Florida, drew national attention for her bizarre acts in court and her hidden past. At 50 years old, she was finally arrested after being on the run for over 2 decades, using multiple fake identities. The charge: killing her co-worker, 34-year-old Jolene Cummings, and disposing of the body so thoroughly that authorities never found it. Cummings was a mother of 3, and her disappearance deeply shook the community. From the start, Kessler showed a Karen attitude: loud, defiant, and convinced of conspiracies against her. She accused the public defender of being related to the victim's family, screaming at the judge to dismiss everyone on her legal team. Early in the process, she engaged in hunger strikes, dropping from around 196 pounds to a fragile 74 pounds. Guards had to wheel her into the courtroom. Despite her claims of illness, mental health evaluations deemed her competent. The judge proceeded with the trial, ignoring her attempts to stall. At trial, the prosecution presented damning evidence. Kessler had suspicious internet queries such as co-worker guilty of murder, missing person body not found, and no body, no crime. Surveillance footage placed her at the salon with Jolene shortly before Cummings vanished. Cummings's car was later discovered near a gas station with Kessler on nearby cameras acting suspiciously. Even more disturbing was the search history showing interest in how to hide or dispose of remains. Behind bars, Kessler's behavior was worse. She reportedly threw feces at guards, stripped off clothes unexpectedly, and screamed about conspiracies at all hours. The sheriff's office documented multiple incidents, describing her as one of the most difficult inmates they'd ever handled. Anytime she had a court date, staff braced for outbursts. Despite her attempts to derail the proceedings, like refusing to appear in person, Kessler stood trial and was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge handed down a life sentence without parole, calling her crimes deliberate and cruel. Kessler erupted, shouting about the unfair system and repeating her claims that the public defender was related to Jolene's cousin. The judge had her wheeled out again, ending the trial with an unforgettable scene. The media labeled her the fake alias Karen, highlighting her tantrums and constant refusal to cooperate. Jolene's family expressed relief but sadness that her body was never recovered. They said they would have preferred a confession so they could lay Jolene to rest properly. The court's final judgment offered some closure as Kessler lost all chance of freedom. Viewers who saw snippets of the trial footage called Kessler's meltdown terrifying yet bizarrely Karen-like, as though she believed the court should just believe her wild accusations. Some mental health professionals suspected severe personality disorders, while others saw a manipulative side, trying to fake incompetence. In the end, Kimberly Kessler remains in a Florida prison, serving her life term. Reports indicate she still has disciplinary issues, continuing a pattern of lashing out at staff or claiming conspiracies. For the community, her story stands as a reminder that sometimes a truly dangerous person can mask themselves under many names, until their rage and entitlement surface in an irreversible act of violence. Detroit authorities stumbled upon one of the most horrifying child abuse cases in 2015 when they evicted Michelle Blair from her apartment and discovered two of her children's bodies in a chest freezer. Dubbed the Freezer Mom, Blair insisted she killed them on purpose, showing no regret. The entire city recoiled at the cruelty, and local media described it as one of the most disturbing crimes in decades. A typical eviction quickly became a crime scene. A moving crew from the local sheriff's department opened a white freezer, expecting to toss out old food or junk. Instead, they found the wrapped remains of a small child. Moments later, they noticed something else, a second body, equally frozen. Stunned, they called for backup. Police arrived and arrested Blair, who offered an immediate confession. During court hearings, Blair openly admitted that she had killed her 13-year-old daughter, Stoney, and her 9-year-old son, Stephen. She claimed they had molested her youngest child, though no evidence backed up that accusation. Her calm demeanor was chilling. She told the judge, "I'd kill them again if I had to." The entire courtroom fell silent at her statement. Blair described how she starved, beat, and eventually took the children's lives, then stored them in the freezer. She justified her actions by painting them as demons. The judge, visibly disturbed, tried to probe for any sign of remorse. Instead, Blair insisted that she slept fine at night, feeling no guilt for what she had done. Judge Dana Hathaway delivered a scathing rebuke, pointing out that Blair had deprived two young souls of life and that her claims of justice were merely a brutal rationalization. Ultimately, the court sentenced Blair to life in prison without parole. During the sentencing, Blair showed little reaction. She folded her arms, nodded, and reaffirmed she had no regrets. Detroit residents, many of whom followed the story closely, were horrified at the intimate details that emerged. News footage capturing Blair's testimony spread online, with viewers labeling her as monstrous and beyond redemption. Community members gathered to provide care for Blair's surviving children who were placed in protective custody. Even seasoned police officers said it was one of the worst things they had seen. Blair was a classic Karen of the most terrifying variety, entitled and unyielding, believing her actions were justified. She argued against any attempts at mental health defense, stating she was perfectly aware of what she did. Her arrogant tone toward the judge made it clear she felt she had the moral high ground, but in the eyes of the law, her admission sealed her fate. Many hoped Blair's case would spur improvements in child welfare checks. The neighbors had suspected something was off, but no one realized that the children were missing or in a freezer. Advocates called for earlier interventions when parents with long histories of anger or violence appear on the radar. Though Blair claims she would do it all over, the outcome is that she will never be free again. The heartbreak of this case lingers in Detroit's memory, reminding everyone how vital it is to protect innocent children, especially when warning signs are present. Michelle Blair's meltdown in court, with zero remorse, stands as a stark example of the darkest side of Karen-like entitlement, where she believed her twisted reasoning excused the unthinkable. In 2015, Colorado authorities encountered a horrifying case that made national headlines. 35-year-old Dinah Lane was so desperate to prove she was pregnant that she violently attacked a pregnant stranger, cutting out the unborn child. This stomach-turning crime began when Lane, who had faked an entire pregnancy, posted a Craigslist ad seeking baby clothes. A pregnant woman named Michelle Wilkins responded, never suspecting the danger awaiting her. Michelle, who was 7 months pregnant, went to Lane's home to discuss the items she believed were up for sale. After a brief conversation, Lane suddenly attacked her, stabbing and choking her. In a grim act, Lane used a kitchen knife to cut Michelle's abdomen and remove the fetus. Michelle lost consciousness and Lane fled with the unborn baby, claiming it was her miscarriage. Police found Michelle in critical condition, but still alive. At Lane's trial, the prosecution laid out the monstrous details. They explained that Lane had told friends and family she was pregnant for months, holding a baby shower and even showing ultrasound pictures she doctored. The pressure to produce a baby led her to commit an unimaginable crime. Wilkins testified about the moment she realized Lane was attacking her. Struggling to breathe and losing blood, she managed to call 911. Her haunting call was played in court, leaving many in tears. Lane faced charges of attempted murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and assault. Cameras captured her sitting at the defense table, appearing tense and at times tearful. She admitted to cutting out the baby, but claimed she had no intention to kill Michelle. The judge, clearly disturbed, condemned Lane's actions, stating they showed a shocking disregard for human life. He sentenced her to a total of 100 years in prison. Lane broke into tears, though many observers felt it was more despair for her fate than remorse for what she had done. Michelle Wilkins addressed the court, describing the terror and pain she endured. She insisted that no sentence could erase the emotional and physical scars. Still, she expressed a desire to forgive, saying she would not let hatred define her. Wilkins explained that her child was taken in the worst possible way, and Lane's punishment needed to reflect the extreme harm caused. The local community followed every twist, with many calling Lane a deranged Karen who believed she could lie her way into motherhood. Some pushed for stronger legislation against crimes involving unborn babies. Under Colorado law, Lane could not be charged with murder of the fetus, sparking debate about fetal homicide statutes. Lane sits in a Colorado prison, serving what amounts to a life sentence. She rarely grants interviews, and officials report she keeps to herself. Michelle Wilkins has since become an advocate for prenatal violence awareness, speaking at public events about her experience. She emphasizes the importance of caution when answering online ads, reminding people that behind a friendly facade, there can lurk someone capable of horrifying brutality. No matter how Lane tried to spin the situation, her meltdown in court showed a woman who realized her delusional plan had destroyed 2 lives, Michelle's unborn baby and any freedom Lane could ever hope for. In the end, her Karen-like sense of entitlement led her to commit a crime that would keep her behind bars for decades. In a 2022 case that shocked Minnesota, 29-year-old Julissa Thaler killed her 6-year-old son, Eli. Despite warnings from child services and the boy's father, Thaler obtained custody not long before the murder. When Eli's body was later found in the trunk of Thaler's car, riddled with gunshot wounds, Onlookers were left speechless. The situation highlighted the system's failure to protect an endangered child. The father, Tory Hart, had raised concerns about Thaler's unstable behavior, alleged drug use, and mental health issues. However, the family court decided to reunite mother and child, citing attempts for family preservation. Just days later, a police officer stopped Thaler due to a shattered back windshield and found blood inside the car. Moments later, they discovered Eli's body in the trunk, apparently shot multiple times. During the trial in Hennepin County, Thaler showed a range of disturbing behaviors. At one point, she claimed innocence and began shouting profanities at the judge. Some bystanders nicknamed her Karen for her loud, entitled approach in court, acting as if the system owed her leniency despite the overwhelming evidence. The prosecution showed ballistic reports tying the gun to Thaler's home, along with phone records of her searching for ways to get rid of unwanted kids. Her defense tried to claim mental instability, pointing to bizarre statements Thaler made about voices in her head, but the judge noted that she had shown consistent planning before the murder, including removing her child from school on the day it happened. Family members testified, describing a woman prone to wild mood swings. The father recounted how he pleaded with authorities to keep Eli away from Thaler, but his concerns were dismissed. A jury convicted Thaler of first-degree murder. During sentencing, the judge called it one of the worst examples of parental betrayal he had ever seen. When the judge pronounced life without the possibility of parole, Thaler screamed, flipping off the cameras and cursing everyone in the courtroom. Bailiffs subdued her, leading her out as the victim's relatives looked on with tearful relief that justice had been served. News outlets widely covered the meltdown, labeling Thaler the mother who declared war on her child. Critics demanded reforms in child protective services, saying Eli's death was preventable. The father, though devastated, said he hoped the life sentence would remind people to heed warning signs when a parent displays violent or erratic behavior. Thaler remains in a Minnesota prison with no prospect of release, consistently flagged by staff for disruptive conduct. Many see her as a chilling example of a Karen who believed her maternal rights outweighed all logic, culminating in a heart-wrenching murder of an innocent child. To this day, candlelight vigils honor Eli's memory, and local lawmakers continue to push for changes in custody evaluations to avoid another tragedy like this. The case stands as a reminder that the system can fail vulnerable children, especially when it underestimates the danger a parent might pose. For the community, Thaler's meltdown was the final affirmation of her inability to grasp the horror of her crime. In early 2022, Green Bay, Wisconsin made headlines for a gruesome homicide. 25-year-old Taylor Shabiznis strangled and dismembered her boyfriend, 24-year-old Shad Therian, after a drug-fueled night. The details were almost too shocking to read. Police discovered body parts in the home, including a severed head in a bucket. Shabiznis allegedly told investigators she had gone into a rage, strangling Shad with a chain, and then engaging in disturbing acts with his remains. Before the main trial, the court held competency hearings to see if Shabiznis could understand proceedings. Her attorney, Quinn Jolly, announced that a psychological evaluation was ongoing, but things took a turn at a routine hearing when Shabiznis suddenly jumped across the defense table and attacked Jolly. Court security tackled her to the ground. Observers described it as a terrifying outburst, with Shabiznis snarling and attempting to strike him. Trial and evidence. Despite the violence in court, the trial continued. The prosecution laid out the evidence, text messages, photos, and Shabiznis's own recorded admissions. She reportedly said she liked it and would have continued if she hadn't been interrupted. The medical examiner confirmed the cause of death was strangulation. The dismemberment appeared methodical, showing planning. The defense tried to argue she was severely unwell, pointing to her bizarre behavior as proof of insanity. Ultimately, the judge rejected the insanity plea, deeming her responsible for her actions. In a final hearing, he sentenced her to life imprisonment without parole. Shabiznis responded with what some called a Karen meltdown, ranting that she had been misunderstood and was not sorry, in the way people expected. She insisted a demon had taken over her mind, but the judge remained unmoved. In prison, Shabiznis continues to have run-ins with staff. Jail documents suggest she occasionally threatens harm or refuses to follow orders, while some mental health professionals say she needs long-term therapy. The legal system has locked the door on any chance of release. Her now infamous lunge at her attorney remains a stark symbol of her unpredictability. Local media dubbed her meltdown the moment she showed her true self. Video clips circulated online, with viewers labeling her beyond savage. Others debated how her drug use played a role or whether she had an undiagnosed condition. Yet for Shad's family, no explanation could justify the brutality. They spoke at sentencing, describing the emotional horror of losing a gentle young man in such a vile manner. The case triggered renewed debate about how drug-induced psychosis or mental illness intersects with violent crime. Yet the outcome stands. Shabusiness is held fully accountable under Wisconsin law. Her meltdown in court only cemented the image of a defendant who was dangerously erratic, overshadowing any sympathy she might have garnered. For many, this story underlines the darkest extremes of a Karen complex, a self-centered worldview that turns lethal when combined with substance abuse and possible mental instability. In mid-2022, Cleveland, Ohio, witnessed a tragic child neglect case. 29-year-old Crystal Candelario left her 16-month-old daughter, Jaliyah, alone in an apartment for 10 days. She headed off to Puerto Rico for a vacation, later stopping in Detroit. Meanwhile, neighbors in her building heard crying for days, eventually followed by a mysterious silence. By the time someone alerted the police, it was too late. Little Jaliyah was found deceased, severely dehydrated and underweight. A day after discovering the body, detectives tracked down Candelario, who returned to Cleveland. She showed little concern, reportedly telling officers she just needed a break. Prosecutors charged her with aggravated murder and child endangerment. At the arraignment, cameras captured her blank expression as the judge read the charges. Local reporters described it as a Karen-like indifference, as if she couldn't understand the severity of what she had done. Footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera became key evidence. It revealed the baby's frantic cries at odd hours. Eventually stopping altogether, prosecutors played the audio in court, prompting gasps from the gallery. Jaliyah's autopsy found she was left with no food or water. The judge expressed outrage at the callousness. "You abandoned your baby to die while you partied. That is the ultimate betrayal of motherhood." Candelario's defense tried to argue she was depressed and overwhelmed, lacking resources or family support. Her attorney claimed she intended to be gone only for a couple of days, but extended her trip. Candelario did speak at sentencing, sobbing as she asked for forgiveness from the public and her daughter's spirit. "I'm sorry I failed you," she cried, but many doubted her sincerity, seeing it as an attempt to reduce her sentence. Unmoved, the judge sentenced Candelario to life in prison without parole, stating, "I can't imagine a more cruel act than leaving a toddler to suffer alone." The final moment in court saw Candelario collapse in tears, which some believed were for herself, not her child. Family members of the father expressed deep grief, calling the punishment appropriate but still insufficient to bring back Jaliyah. News outlets interviewed angry neighbors who said they had heard the crying, but never imagined the mother had vanished for so long. Some felt guilt for not intervening sooner. Advocacy groups used the case as an example of why communities need to look out for each other's children more carefully. The media portrayed Candelario as a Karen who treated her own child's well-being as less important than a personal vacation. In Cleveland, the memory of Jaliyah haunts those who wonder how a mother could be so self-absorbed. The tragedy spurred local nonprofits to increase awareness around postpartum mental health and single-parent stress. Candelario insisted she never intended harm, but the horrific outcome spoke for itself. Her meltdown in court, pleading for mercy only after the evidence was undeniable, underscored a pattern of selfishness. In the end, no amount of tears changed the fact that she left a helpless toddler to die, and for that, she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. These Karens took entitlement and cruelty to shocking extremes and paid the highest price with life behind bars. Their courtroom outbursts, from wild rants to violent attacks, show how desperation and a twisted sense of self-importance can collide. Each case is a reminder that justice eventually catches up, no matter how loud or outrageous the defendant's meltdown may be.